Hello, we're just right up to the point where we're discussing what has happened on our case, and it gets remanded back to the Chippewa Falls branch. I decided to go down to the Chippewa Falls branch after applying to the Supreme Court of Wisconsin that the files are incorrect and certain changes needed to be made to the documents. We had never been served a single paper or motion or anything during the entire court process of the one property only. We had demonstrated that there were 100 errors per document where their review documents person had taken her stamp and smished it halfway down on a document and initialed or dated things to try to make it look like that had been done by the notary at the time that one loan had been signed, and had gone and made other little changes. Other documents appeared, a year after the signing that supposedly were done at the time and were not. And we proved 100 points per document on the frauds and changes that were done. And the judge addressed this and said, every charge you have made against these people remains uncontested. They have not challenged or denied one single allegation that you have made, and in many situations have admitted what they've done. But without a man here to stand behind you, we can do anything that we want to you. If you want to show up with a man here standing with you, then we'll listen to you, and if not, we can do anything that we want to you. Hence, I made the video which says marriage proposal, basically mocking that I'm not allowed to be a property owner because I'm single, which was not a choice. I mean, I had the most fabulous relationship in the whole world with my husband until they threw me under the bus and paid him to ignore me and leave, saying, well, things always go south eventually, so you might as well just leave her now. And that's what they told him. That's what he said in court. And he's like, but I love her. I don't want to get divorced. Well, I wasn't single out of choice. We never had any arguments. We absolutely adored and idolized the man. We made sure that there was home-baked bread and pasta and dessert every single night, that the fireplace was all vacuumed out and fresh wood was laid. I mean, the man was treated like absolutely better than the best king. So why he allowed them to pay him to throw me under the bus, I don't know, but that wasn't my decision, so I don't take responsibility for it. I continue to remain absolutely devoted to my wedding vows and celibate and abstaining. And, if he wants to violate the rules of God, that's his problem. And yes, I am going to, when the right man shows up, say that I waited, and the right man will be appreciative of that and will be respectful and appreciative to me of waiting until the right person comes along. Even though it's now been years, I'm still here waiting. I'm not going to hell for some guy that wants to have a fling. I'm going to do things the right way, no matter who does these wrong things against me. And that was also brought up, as we shall discuss later, in what Attorney Erdmeyer said to me when he says that I'm the basis of a CIA test, which really probably means FBI, because they have totally paid the FBI in our region to do anything that they want. And it seems like they like to blame it on the other guy, so we're not sure who the real agents are. But they came to me several years ago and said that they had done more harassment and corruption and just downright abuse against me and everyone in my family, and had done 10 times more to me than they had done to Christopher Dorner, a policeman, supposed Christian, who flipped out and began killing the officers that had brought him to his demise, and wanted to know why he had flipped and I hadn't. They pulled me into an office and told this to me. And getting back to our current state with the Supreme Court of Wisconsin saying that they're going to remand it back to the lower court, and I had applied to them in a timely way to request that the writ, which describes the events and documents filed, be altered to reflect certain things that were not included in the record. And instead, they sent the file back to Chippewa. And as I walked into the courtroom and office area to wait for the documents, all the ladies there told me that they had two ladies working full-time for 2 weeks to manufacture all the documents that should have happened and should have been in the folder, because their folder was empty. There was one piece of paper in that folder, and that was it. And so they're busy manufacturing these 4 giant folders full of all the documents that should have been served and noticed and whatever. They're creating them from behind, years after it should have been done, and years after they say they were done on the face of them. So they gave me access to the one folder only, and I noted a couple of things that I needed to get a copy of, and lo and behold, a friend of mine, the reporter / editor of the local newspaper, walked in, and I'm standing talking to him, and they had already called the police across the street to say that she left and she's coming out the front door and she's going to have these stolen documents in her possession. Well, I had put the folder back on the counter and told the lady what one I wanted copies of, and stood there talking with my friend, and they had already made this phone call. So the police walked in and they're like, "What's going on?" And they say, "You took this folder, da da da." And I'm like, "Well, I'm still here and the folder's still in her window. She hasn't even made the copies yet." And so they were a little freaked that there was an obvious setup to try to get me on something so that they could hold me and then force me into complying with whatever it is that they wanted. And the editor of the newspaper, the Chippewa Falls Herald, Mark, was sitting right there next to me, still talking to me, and he was like freaking out that they had done this. And so shortly after that, he resigned from the paper and went back to work at the university. When he saw something unfold like that right in front of him, where they were trying to set me up, and since I got involved in a discussion with him, I hadn't left yet. So obviously the court never complied. They never scheduled it for another hearing. They never did anything with it. They stacked the folder full, and then some months ago, supposedly they went in and destroyed it all because it's no longer necessary for them to hold it. Well, they were supposed to do certain actions with rehearing certain things and then go through the process again. This is the judgment, and this is our opinion, and no, she's going to appeal it, and she's going to appeal it back to this court, and then back to this court, and so forth. And instead, in the first time that I went through that whole process, the only time it ever went through, the clerk of the courts, Mr. T, we'll call him, was told to intercept any mail that came from me to the courts and to immediately turn everything down. Well, by the end of our court saga, I had a court hearing going because of the injuries sustained when this truck ran into me and I had the emergency surgery and all that, and I had the property one going. And he wrote back a very confused letter where he said, "We're just turning both of these down. This one for this and that one for that." And he kept jumping back and forth between two entirely unrelated cases. You cannot do that in a court document. You address one document to one case, another document to another case. They came in at different times. Everything that happened was at different times. You can't decipher them when they're all smished like this. Completely unprofessional. He absolutely showed total disrespect and intentional negligence and harassment on this case by doing such. So we're awaiting right now information from the courts on what has happened to that case. Obviously, that remand back to the lower case was done to get the case away from me, possibly taking it to the U.S. Supreme Court. But until we get our letter back from them saying that, well, we looked at this again and we still hold by our same decision, we're not going to hold the hearing, we're going to do whatever, until they get something back to say that they've served me and they've had a new hearing and this is their new decision, and we can't progress further on this, and we would desperately require the assistance of any attorney that might be viewing this video. Remember, the entire properties taken were 12 properties for $128 million. That should give you some idea of the incentive that you might have to look into and or hold this case. I did go down and meet with Attorney General Van Hollen, and it was scheduled to meet also with former Senator Dave Zine at that same hearing, and some other individuals were named at that same confirmed hearing as well. And when I arrived, I basically was thrown under the bus. I met several of his representatives, which said that they would look into things. I went back home to my farm. I met with State Representative Jeff Woods, and when he looked at all the evidences that I had, he immediately called back to the Capitol and said, this is the worst case we've ever seen. This is so huge, it's going to require both of our offices working together with all our investigative staff, and we're gonna save this for this poor handicapped woman. He drove all the way from the state capitol to my farm, this farm number 2 in Bloomer, Wisconsin, saw this information, called the offices, told them to get ready for him, what they were going to do, and started back down to the office. However, shortly after he left, Mr. David Zine called me and said, how did it go, and what did he say? And I told him everything, and all of a sudden, he became very agitated, angry, violent, and crazy on the phone, and said that he was going to call people and have Mr. Jeff Woods intercepted. And he did, somewhere near Portage, Wisconsin, about an hour or so from the Capitol. He was stopped by an officer and arrested on a DUI charge, and it just went all over the Eau Claire newspaper, which Dave Zine had a personal female, of course, representative, writer who would do stories, dictate them according to his preferences. And so they slammed this man, saying that he was drunk. And then on the very back page, the very last line of the back page, totally way too cliche, it said .00. In other words, he was not drunk. This was a ploy to get rid of him for helping me, because, oh my God, his neighbor across the street is the man that ran over me with a truck, it turns out. And so all of a sudden there was another burglary, and items were taken from my house, including Dave Zine's, what do you call it, tags from Vietnam, and some cards that he had given to me like 25 years ago. He said, oh, I love you, I want to marry you, and it was right in that little niche when he was leaving the one and, you know, hanging out with a girlfriend or something. Apparently he decided I was the one, and my family just said, ooh, stay away from him, he's trouble. And that's as far as that ever went. But he wanted those cards and anything that pointed to us knowing each other to be gone. Even though he came over to the house and took me and my daughter out or stayed for dinner several times, he wanted to make sure that nobody connected us after this state representative, Jeff Woods, was removed from office. But it was funny that Mr. Scott Walker called me and asked if he could run for president or not, or if I would tell everybody about the 20,000 homes that were seized in Wisconsin. Now remember, this was just a test on those poor little uneducated Okie farmer folks that don't know nothing, so that he could finalize and tweak where the errors were, where he ran into problems. And then he went out and committed exactly the same thefts as occurred on this in 15 other states. Now this is where the rest of you governors should start to get excited and see what's happening here. Because it's not just some other state, some other guy, some other person. It's your constituent too. He went to 15 other states. I have the names of those, and they're probably in one of the books as well. That he went to 100,000 properties per state. We're up from our original 20,000 in Wisconsin to 100,000. That's 1,520,000 homes taken in 15 states. And only because of these videos going out has he changed his operation, slowed down a little bit, gotten his kid to start making donations, rings a bell, to local politicians, so that they will hide or cover up if any of this comes to light in their areas. I've gone online and I've seen some of the donations that his son, who is now named the head of his operations, which, by the way, consists of 80% of all highways on the corridor that runs from like Utah all the way back through Wisconsin. That whole Highway 80, Highway 94 area, you know, when you get off on an off-ramp and there's 4 hotels at that off-ramp, 3 out of 4 of those are going to be his. He controls or owns or franchises Comfort Inn and hotels, and you know, my name lacks me on all these hotels right now. And that's what his operation is. He took the initial 20,000 homes and sold them. This is a part of the banking fraud operation to his friends and such, and raised $600 million so that he could re-outfit or fix motel chains, entire chains. And he used the $600,000 profit he made from the stolen Wisconsin homes or $600 million, I'm sorry, I said that wrong, to re-outfit these other hotels. 80% of all the hotels on that whole highway to corridor are now under his control, or under franchise names under his control, or in his son's name. And he used that money, that $600 million, the first $600 million he made, to re-outfit those hotels. The properties were seized not because they were in default, but they were declared to be in default because the bank under M&I and Marv Schmidt and Katie or Catherine Stern Weiss, W-E-I-S-S, W-I-S-E-S-T-E-R-N, W-I-S-E, all different variations, which is again illegal, on all of her stationaries and letters and things that went out to hide her true identity in case of lawsuit or court involvement. You know, all of this was just horrendously done illegally. Now, why could it get this far? Well, there was one court judge who saw what was happening, and he called us all to go into his office, just stopped the middle of the hearing, dragged us into the office and said, "Your witness here, Miss Katie here, is lying, and I'm not going to participate in what's being done here. We are not going to have a hearing for an immediate calling for foreclosure without even a trial, and we're going to give this lady a full trial." And he called their representative a complete liar. We walked back into the courtroom, and he said that I would get a full trial, a real trial. And a month later, when we turned up for a status hearing, the judge had retired and gone to work for Anderson and Anderson, for which the Anderson secretary said he received $500,000 initial payment, regular monthly payments thereafter for life, was working from home, although they had not assigned to him a single case. In other words, he was paid off to throw us under the bus. Please write to me at buffalostudy@yahoo.com or paypal.me/buffalostudy@yahoo.com. We've had several judges involved in this, which were all paid $500,000 or so apiece, plus permanent wages per life. My personal attorney was paid $375,000 plus the next 10 wins. We've had other individuals that were paid $75,000 each to kill me and my child. And one of the officers that was paid to kill me was a year later paid an additional $50,000 to harass me, since his murder attempt of myself and my child was captured on 9/11, and he was unable to commit the murder against me. So please stay tuned for our next video in the series, and write to me at paypal.me/buffalostudy@yahoo.com. Again, this is Ellie Blair White. Thank you so much.